Hello everyone and welcome to another dark ground video. In this video we're going to talk about the very tragic case and murder of James Bulger, so stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to another dark ground video. In this video, as you heard from the intro, we will be talking about the tragic case of James Bulger that happened here in the UK, more precisely in Liverpool. I was been mulling over whether I should do this video or not, and I thought that it should be done to get out there, but I will do it in the most tasteful and respectful way that I can. So, closed circuit television, or CCTV, evidence from the New Strand shopping centre in Bootle, which is in Liverpool, taken on Friday the 12th of February 1993, showed Robert Thompson and John Venables casually observing children, apparently selecting a target. The boys were playing truant from school, which they did regularly. Throughout the day, Thompson and Venables were seen stealing various items, including a sweet, a troll doll, some batteries and a can of blue paint, some of which were later found at the murder scene. One of the boys later revealed they were planning to find a child to abduct, lead him into the busy road alongside the shopping centre and push him into the path of oncoming traffic. Rather tragically, that same afternoon, James Bulger from nearby Kirby went with his mother Denise to the New Strand shopping centre. Whilst inside the A.R. Tim's butcher's shop on the lower floor of the centre at around 15:40 or 20 to 4, Denise, who had been temporarily distracted, realised that her son had disappeared. Thompson and Venables approached James Bulger, took him by the hand and led him out of the shopping centre. The moment was caught on CCTV at 15:42. Bulger was taken to the Leeds and Liverpool Canal around a quarter of a mile from the New Strand shopping centre, where he was dropped on his head and suffered injuries to his face. The boys joked about pushing Bulger into the canal. An eyewitness during the trial said that when he saw Bulger at the canal, he was crying his eyes out. During a 2.5 mile, 4 kilometre walk across Liverpool, the boys were seen by no less than 38 people, but most bystanders did nothing to intervene. 2 people challenged Thompson and Venables, but they claimed Bulger was their younger brother or that he was lost, and they were taking him to the local police station. At one point, the boys took Bulger into a pet shop, from which they were rejected. Eventually, the boys arrived in the village of Walton, and with Walton Lane Police Station across the road facing them, they hesitated and led Bulger up a steep bank to a railway line near the disused Walton and Anfield railway station, close to Anfield Cemetery, where they began torturing him. And the injuries and torture they inflicted on young James were quite horrific, and out of respect, I am not going to go into them. But to give in tasteful detail, he had 10 skull fractures from being hit on the head with an iron bar. But all in all, 42 in total. But it ended up one of these injuries or a combination of a few of them could have been the fatal blow. Thompson and Venables laid Bulger across the railway tracks and weighed his head down with rubble in the hope that a train would hit him and make his death appear to be an accident. After they left the scene, his body was tragically cut in half by a train. And also tragically, his body was discovered 2 days later on the 14th of February. And it was determined that he had died before he was even struck by the train. So, the police quickly found a low-resolution video image of Bulger's abduction from the New Strand shopping centre by two unidentified boys. The railway embankment upon which his body had been discovered was adorned with hundreds of bunches of flowers. The family of one boy who was detained for questioning was subsequently released had to flee the city due to threats by vigilantes. The breakthrough came when a woman, on seeing slightly enhanced images of the two boys on national television, recognised Venables, whom she knew had played truant with Thompson that day. She contacted the police and the boys were arrested. So, the fact that the suspects were so young came as a shock to investigating officers headed by Detective Superintendent Albert Kirby of Merseyside Police. Early press reports and police statements had referred to Bulger being seen with two youths, suggesting that the killers were teenagers. The ages of the boys being difficult to ascertain from the images captured by CCTV. Forensic tests confirmed that both boys had the same blue paint on their clothing as found on Bulger's body. Both had blood on the shoes. The blood on Thompson's shoes were matched to Bulger's through DNA tests. A pattern of bruising on Bulger's right cheek matched the features of the upper part of a shoe worn by Thompson. A paint mark in the toe cap of one of Venables' shoes indicated that he must have used some force when he kicked Bulger. Thompson is said to have asked police whether the 2-year-old had been taken to hospital to get him alive again. The boys were each charged with the murder of James Bulger on the 20th of February 1993 and appeared at South Sefton Youth Court on 22nd February 1993, where they were remanded in custody to await trial. In the aftermath of their arrest and throughout the media accounts of their trial, the boys were referred to as Child A, Thompson, and Child B, Venables. Awaiting trial, they were held in the secure units where they would eventually be sentenced to be detained indefinitely. Up to 500 protesters gathered at South Sefton Magistrates Court during the boys' initial court appearances. Parents of the accused were moved to different parts of the country and assumed new identities following death threats from vigilantes. The full open trial at Preston Crown Court on the 1st of November 1993 conducted as an adult trial, with the accused in the dock away from their parents and the judge and court officials in legal regalia. The boys denied the charges of murder, abduction and attempted abduction. The attempted abduction charge related to an incident at the New Strand shopping centre earlier on the 12th of February 1993. The day of Bulger's death, Thompson and Venables had attempted to lead another 2-year-old boy, but had been prevented by the boy's mother. So the boys by then, aged 11, were found guilty of Bulger's murder at the Preston court on 24th of November 1993. So let's put this into context. They were 10 when they originally committed this crime, becoming the youngest convicted murderers of the 20th century. The judge, Mr. Justice Morland, told Thompson and Venables that they had committed a crime of unparalleled evil and barbarity. In my judgment, your conduct was both cunning and very wicked. Morland sentenced them to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure, with the recommendation that they should be kept in custody for very, very many years to come, recommending a minimum term of 8 years. At the close of the trial, the judge lifted reporting restrictions and allowed the names of the killers to be released, saying, "I did this because the public interest overrode the interest of the defendants." There was a need for an informed public debate on crimes committed by young children. Sir David Omond later criticised the decision and outlined difficulties created by it in his 2010 review of the probation service's handling of the case. Shortly after the trial, and after the judge had recommended a minimum sentence of 8 years, Lord Taylor of Gosforth, the Lord Chief Justice, recommended that the two boys should serve a minimum of 10 years, which would have made them eligible for release in February 2003 at the age of 20. The editors of the Sun newspaper handed a petition bearing nearly 280,000 signatures to Home Secretary Michael Howard in a bid to increase the time spent by both boys in custody. The campaign was successful, and in July 1994, Howard announced that the boys would be kept in custody for a minimum of 15 years, meaning they would not be considered for release until February 2008, by which time they would be 25 years old. Lord Donaldson criticised Howard's intervention, describing the increased tariff as institutionalised vengeance by a politician playing to the gallery. The increased minimum term was overturned in 1997 by the House of Lords that ruled it unlawful for the Home Secretary to decide on minimum sentences for young offenders. The High Court and European Court of Human Rights had since ruled that, though the Parliament may set minimum and maximum terms for individual categories of crime, it is the responsibility of the trial judge, with the benefit of all the evidence and arguments from both prosecution and defence counsel, to determine the minimum terms in individual criminal cases. So, after the trial, Thompson was held at the Barton Moss Secure Care Centre in Manchester. Venables was detained in Vardy House, a small 8-bedded unit at Red Bank Secure Unit in St Helens on Merseyside. These locations were not publicly known until after the boys' release. Details of the boys' lives were recorded twice daily on running sheets and signed by the member of staff who had written them. The records were stored at the units and copied to officials in Whitehall. The boys were taught to conceal their real names and the crime they had committed, which resulted in their being in the units. Venables' parents regularly visited their son at Red Bank, just as Thompson's mother did every 3 days at Barton Moss. The boys received education and rehabilitation despite initial problems. Venables was said to have eventually made good progress at Red Bank, resulting in him being kept there for the full 8 years, despite the facility only being a short-stay remand unit. Both boys, however, were reported to suffer post-traumatic stress disorder, and Venables in particular told of experiencing nightmares and flashbacks of the murder. So, in 1999, lawyers for Thompson and Venables appealed to the European Court of Human Rights that the boys' trial had not been impartial since they were too young to follow proceedings and understand an adult court. The European Court dismissed their claim that the trial was inhumane and degrading treatment, but upheld their claim they were denied a fair hearing by the nature of the court proceedings. The European Court also held that Michael Howard's intervention had led to a highly charged atmosphere, which resulted in an unfair judgment. On the 15th of March 1999, the Court of Strasbourg ruled by 14 votes to 5 that there had been a violation of Article 6 of the European Convention of Human Rights regarding the fairness of the trial of Thompson and Venables, stating the public trial process in an adult court must be regarded in the case of an 11-year-old child as a severely intimidating process. In September 1999, Bulger's parents appealed to the European Court of Human Rights but failed to persuade the court that a victim of crime has the right to be involved in determining the sentence of the perpetrator. The European Court case led to the new Lord Chief Justice, Lord Wool, reviewing the minimum sentence in October 2000. He recommended the tariff be reduced from 10 to 8 years, adding that young offender institutions were a corrosive atmosphere for the juveniles. In June 2001, after a 6-month review, the parole board ruled the boys were no longer a threat to public safety and could be released as their minimum tariff had expired in February of that year. The Home Secretary David Blunkett approved of the decision and they were released a few weeks later on lifelong licence, after serving 8 years. Both men were given new identities and moved to secret locations under a witness protection-style program. This was supported by the fabrication of passports, national insurance numbers, qualification certificates and medical records. Blunkett added his own conditions to their licence and insisted on being sent daily updates on the men's actions. The terms of their release included the following. They were not allowed to contact either each other or James Bulger's family. They were prohibited from visiting the Merseyside region. Curfews may be imposed on them and they must report to the probation officers. If they breached the rules or were deemed a risk to the public, they could be returned to prison. An injunction was imposed on the media after the trial, preventing the publication of details about Thompson and Venables. The worldwide injunction was kept in force following their release on parole, so their new identities and locations could not be published. Blunkett stated in 2001 that the injunction was granted because there was a real and strong possibility that their lives would be at risk if their identities became known. So they went out on life life license, which means they had this legacy lie, a new life, and kept everything. And they both had to go on with life dealing with that. But for John Venables, he found that quite a difficult task. On 2nd of March 2010, the Ministry of Justice revealed that John Venables had been returned to prison for an unspecified violation of the terms of his licence of release. Justice Secretary Jack Straw stated that Venables had been returned to prison because of extremely serious allegations and stated that he was unable to give further details of the reason for John Venables' return to custody because it was not in the public interest to do so. On the 7th of March, Venables was returned to prison accused of child pornography offences. And of course you can imagine, and as was the case, James Bulger's mom, Denise Fergus, said that she was angry that the parole board did not tell her that Venables had been returned to prison and called for his anonymity to be removed if he was charged with the crime. A spokesperson for the Ministry of Justice stated that there is a worldwide injunction against publication of either killer's location on new identity. So on 21st of June 2010, Venables was charged with possession and distribution of indecent images of children. It was alleged that he had downloaded 57 indecent images of children over the 12-month period to February 2010, and allowed other people to access the files through a peer-to-peer network. Venables faced 2 charges under the Protection of Children Act 1978. On July the 23rd of July 2010, Venables appeared at a court hearing at the Old Bailey via a video link, visible only to the judge hearing the case. He pleaded guilty to charges of downloading and distributing child pornography and was given a sentence of 2 years imprisonment. So, as you can see, Venables struggled greatly, and he was released on the 4th of July 2013. Well, it was reported it had been approved for release on that day and was actually released on the 3rd of September 2013. But 4 years later, on the 23rd of November 2017, it was reported that Venables had again been recalled to prison for possession of child abuse imagery. The Ministry of Justice declined to comment on the report. On 5th of January 2018, Venables was charged with unspecified offences relating to indecent images of children. On the 7th of February 2018, Venables pleaded guilty to possession of indecent images of children for a second time. He pleaded guilty via video link, 3 charges of making indecent images of children and 1 for possessing a manual. He admitted being in possession of 392 Category A, 148 Category B, and 630 Category C pornography images, and was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. In September of this year, he was denied parole, so he's still in as of this year, so he's still in prison, September this year. So that just gives you an insight into the mind, especially in John Venables' case, what doing something, committing a crime of murder at age 10 can do to a mind already messed up. And for poor James, he lost his life in the worst way imaginable. Now, James Bulger was not that much younger than me. We would have been about the same age at the time, and you just can't fathom how 2 10-year-old boys commit such a crime. And I just want to say that Denise, I can't imagine what you've been going through and what you went through with this case. But I hope one day that you get justice. And on that note, the case book on this case closes. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave comments on what topics you want to see next, or on any other video. I've been Danny, and remember, what's under the bed is not the only thing that you have to be scared of. Goodbye for now.